It shouldn't really be that hard for Dan Andrews to say sorry. Those families were put through all sorts of pain. Details on how to join the class actions are on our homepage.
We feel like we're animals because they didn't give us a notice or anything.
It was here 2 years ago that 3,000 public housing residents were detained without warning inside their own homes. COVID cases were rising and 9 towers like this one were put into a hard lockdown. These residents are now set to go head-to-head against the state of Victoria in court, claiming they were falsely imprisoned. Who could forget heartbreaking images like this? Residents pleading for basic supplies.
Mate, it's horrible. People are starving, being refused medical care.
All we see is police everywhere, and the kids were frightened.
We still think about it because we still have that fear like it might be happening one day.
Milibrahan Worko says she came to Australia for a better life.
We thought that we were in jail. Because we saw all that police, we thought like, did we do any criminal stuff, you know?
Victoria's Ombudsman ruled the lockdown of the Flemington and North Melbourne towers violated human rights, but Premier Daniel Andrews refuses to say sorry.
They're suing the state, they're suing every taxpayer, and I'm not going to say anything that jeopardises the interests of the state.
Just because we live in here, it doesn't mean that we're not human beings, you know? So we need him to apologise to us.
Mohammed Yusuf agrees.
It's still like yesterday for us. We don't know if it can be again tomorrow, if the same thing. That's why a lot of people moved out.
These neighbours are among 3,000 residents, part of the landmark class action. But the wheels of justice are turning slowly. While legal action was launched in March last year, it won't be until September next year when the case goes to trial.
To go after people that are starving. There's babies that need formula, there's people that need nappies, there's bags with medications and they are even labelled. Yep. Medications and they're labelled. I mean, why can't we take it up to people that need them?
Because the buildings are quarantined.
We're not going to go up. Why can't we organise someone who lives in that building to come down and take it up?
As I said, we're following our directions that come through here.
But these directions are starving and hurting our people. That's what they're doing. I mean, they're impractical, they're inhumane. What do you want us to do?
Look at this, man. All those buildings eating the food that was meant to be served to the people. Look at that. That's what they got us. That's what they wanted us to eat.
Over the course of 2020, the people of Victoria have experienced extended stay-at-home orders and other restrictions in the fight against COVID-19. But from July the 4th, one group of Melburnians experienced a lockdown that was different to all others. These people, about 3,000 in total, were residents of high-rise public housing towers. Their lockdown prompted many complaints to my office, and our subsequent investigation received almost 150. My report has now been tabled in the Victorian Parliament. The investigation learned that on the morning of July the 4th, senior health officials agreed the towers needed to be locked down to contain a worrying outbreak of the virus. The officials expected the lockdown to begin the next day, allowing time to plan for food deliveries and other logistics. But at a press conference at 4 p.m, the Premier announced the lockdown starting immediately. The lockdown was enforced by large numbers of police who were on site before the residents knew or understood what was happening. Many were initially without food, medication and other supports. Residents at 8 of the 9 towers were detained in their homes for 5 days. Residents of one tower were detained for a further 9 days, waiting more than a week to be allowed outside for supervised access to fresh air. Their stories are deeply distressing.